All right, so what's up with the White House here?
All right, let's move it along. Okay, so this one started off. I mean, you guys have probably seen the White House is kind of being more proactive in targeting Facebook with some of their press releases and their briefings and stuff, right? Where they're basically saying, "Hey, Facebook, you've got a shitload of misinformation, specifically COVID-19 misinformation that's harming our society, etc. You need to do a better job." Anyways, in one of the briefings, the press secretary, and I am the worst. I don't even know this lady's name.
Jen
It's probably
Psaki. But
yeah,
butchered that last
Jen
name.
Psaki. Fuck if I know. Anyways, this was the interesting thing. I'm just going to say this, and I'm just curious as to how you guys respond to this. So this isn't quite verbatim, but this is basically what she said. If you're banned on one social media platform, you should be banned on every social media platform.
Ooh.
No.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so I've read a couple.
Well,
articles.
wait, hang on. Let me get back up.
Yeah, go
for
ahead.
some, maybe there is an asterisk for like some offenses. Then
Okay, hey
yes,
guys,
like-
we're back to our slippery slope discussion, but let's dive in. Keep going, Burkett.
Okay. Well, I was just gonna say maybe if it was like, and again, I'm gonna use the same argument we always use.
God damn it!
Yeah. If it's child porn, then maybe they lose the rights. But I think, at that point, then you're just probably talking about them losing the rights to the internet, right? I mean, people do lose their rights to touch
how can
anything
you-
with a battery in it.
All right, so let's say you post your child porn to YouTube. How can Instagram come along and be
Not
like,
me.
nope? Listen, man, you're in the corner. The corner hasn't changed from unmuzzled 0.0.2.
No, I mean, so how this,
that makes no sense.
how this came up was essentially, I mean, it's a little bit longer point that she was making, but it's in regards to this COVID-19 misinformation that's on Facebook, and there needing to be more rules of the road for how social networks kind of govern and manage content on their platforms. But it then means that these social networks need to maintain a block list of people that are not allowed on these systems. And how would you even verify that? I mean, then we have to go through real identity verification. And then it happens, we have the same discussion, we've brought this one up before. At what scale then does this apply? Yeah. Does this mean like if I'm starting a social network or even just like a web forum, is that a social network? I don't know. But I have to communicate with this global block list API of people that can and cannot based off of what
So I
parameters,
have to have like
their
a social
email address
security,
or what?
Yeah. I have like a social security number that I get or something like that.
Yeah.
Like my own internet number. That would be.
I mean, obviously, this is just in a press briefing, right? This isn't in.
Yeah.
No one's proposing a law or anything on this front. But this one struck me as like really alarming.
And they walked it back literally like hours later. They were like, we didn't mean that. We just meant, there's some misinformation out there on the internet, and it would be great if that misinformation weren't on the internet.
No, yeah, and I understand that, but that to me, it's like if you're communicating on behalf of the fucking White House, right? Like, have your ducks in a row at least a little bit on what can and cannot be applied within the legal system, or can and cannot be applied within how our society operates. Like, what standards we hold ourselves to, like the First Amendment.
Yeah.
Yeah, like there needed to have been like a council of tech people sitting there and being like, hang on, no, that's a can of worms.
There's people who recently raised their hands.
Possible.
Yeah, bad idea.
Yeah, yeah.
In my mind, it's like it's not the same, but it's almost equivalent of like Trump being like, why don't we just open the people up and just put like UV light into their bodies?
Yeah.
Or whatever the fuck he was saying. I'm like, okay. Interesting. I know why you're approaching this idea, but terrible.
Yeah. I mean, to me, it's just, it's the White House and the government not knowing how the internet works or something. I mean, that's just.
But that's the concern. Possible. I mean, that's where, for me, it's just like, that's where ideas for laws come from, right? Or can come from, right?
I also just, and this is gonna piss a lot of people off, But I also think that COVID-19 is not the hill to die on for this stuff, right? Because if you're talking about misinformation, the slippery slope thing always applies. Like, all right, so we start with COVID, and then all of a sudden people talking about the 2020 election, if they don't say the right thing, now it's misinformation. Like, somebody who thinks, I think, they could go online and say, oh, I think there was a bunch of voter fraud. And, you could easily see a label getting slapped on that saying, nope, voter fraud. Science says, not voter fraud, blah, blah, blah. So now that person is on the quote, no-fly list for the internet.
Yeah.
Right. And then it's the next topic and the next topic. And this one, misinformation, a hill to die on would be like if we were in, I don't know, World War II and people were posting troop movements. Right. And they were like, oh, we're going to attack here. That would be something where I would say, all right, the government probably has a vested interest in
that's not
that
misinformation.
Down.
That's leaking information.
Yeah, but you see what I'm saying? Like, COVID it's such a benign. Yes, a lot of people have died, but compared to like a pandemic with a lethality rate of like 80 out of 100 people dead, it just doesn't strike me as the thing to die on to trade in the Constitution for. Does that make sense?
I think it's just no. I think it's just opportunistic.
Yeah,
Of just looking at it and saying, there's a chance that we can get our agenda through. I mean, if we had concerns about Trump being on the platform and Trump even becoming president because of these platforms, what could we do to ensure that can't happen? Well, if we can get more control over these platforms and what can and cannot, and we're the ones that have access to the levers, not the executives and the powers that be at Facebook, at Twitter, at YouTube, etc.
Yeah.
Well, there's one episode you had recommended a podcast for us to listen to, and I did. It was about the rights, and we were talking about incitement, I think, at the time for the January 6th thing. But the idea here is that when you create this tool here, who's to say what is misinformation and what isn't? So while your party might be in control now, and what you deem as misinformation is applied, but then when the other party gets in, what do they consider misinformation? Like if you could imagine Trump being president, saying that he didn't win the election in 2020 could be considered misinformation, right? And saying that that there was no fraud could be considered misinformation, right? I mean, that is a very dangerous ticking time bomb to put into place.
No, but even
and that starts to get into censorship pretty quickly. Yeah.
And even just the real world case that we all experience, and again, I'm sorry listeners if you've heard this one before, but it still blows my fucking mind, is early on in the pandemic, there were people that were suggesting and saying, you know what, it looks like there's a good chance that COVID-19 actually came from a lab. That doesn't mean that we're blaming the Chinese. That doesn't mean that we're saying it was on purpose. Whatever, but that could be its origin story. Yeah. And that was flagged as, misinformation. People needed to be suspended and banned and blocked because it's not. And then all of a sudden, here we are in 2021, and people are now saying, no, that's totally probably what happened, and the White House needs to investigate it, and they are investigating it. And then here we are. So it's like you need to allow discourse to play out, especially when it's around something that is of scientific concern. You need to allow scientists to discover. Like science is... I listened to a debate. This was several years ago, but I listened to a debate between like two geologists one time. I think this was a Joe Rogan podcast, whatever. Anyways, and I just listened to them to talk, and you could just totally... in my mind, it just really struck me as like science is not... it's not in a solid state. It's very fluid. It's constantly moving forward. We never know exactly what all the laws are. We know what we know what we can most accurately predict now. In the future, it'll even become more accurate.
Yeah.
As we discover. So it's not a solid thing. So you can't just say, well, that's not scientifically accurate. Well, that's in this moment as best we understand it.
Yeah, I think with in that specific example too, it's a lot of people probably not even necessarily saying, I think that could have been done in a lab. It's like people who are, this is done in a lab. This is, it's conspiracy level stuff, or like, that whole pandemic thing and all of that stuff that comes out. That's where you get people marching down the streets and saying like, we got to go attack China now because of this. You know what I mean? So.
No, but that's the fucked up thing, is that there's probably going to be people that are like that. They're like, you know what, China fucking did this. Then there's other people that are more reasoned and saying, no, from a scientific standpoint and a logic standpoint, it's like, no, there's this the Wuhan Institute of Virology is there. They study coronaviruses, and they do
That's
gain of
coincidence,
function.
man.
Yeah, and they do gain of
just
function
coincidence.
research there. No, so it's like, so they're saying it's at least worth exploring.
Yeah. I heard a
So
great...
you have the whole range of everyone. There's going to be the loonies, then there's going to be people that are more reasonably minded, then there's people that believe something just slightly on the other direction. You have to allow room for all of it.
I heard a great thing that I want to share with you two on a podcast a little while back. So the guy was talking about the phrase conspiracy theory and how handy that is if you happen to be the people that are in power. Because if once you use that phrase, right, it automatically turns off most people because they don't want to be the lunatic fringe element, right? They just want to be normal. And so what
Right.
he said to this, if you go to most people and you say to them, hey, do you think that rich and powerful people sometimes get together behind closed doors and talk about how they could change the law or structure governments and stuff to kind of help them out and, keep their companies at the top and, make their lives easy? Like everybody would say, yeah, that absolutely happens. Like, of course, Jeff
That's what
Bezos-
lobbying
Then they
is.
add in,
Yeah.
but then they add the part where the satanic ritual where they eat children and
Yeah,
the,
but I mean,
the pineal gland of the
so we're all willing to buy that. But as soon as you label that like a conspiracy theory, then all of a sudden all of us are turned off by it, and we go, no, man, I'm not into conspiracy theories. But it's the same thing. It's just how you label it, right? So if you happen
Well,
to be
yeah.
the government officials that are, cavorting with Jeff Bezos or whoever, you just say, oh no, what you honestly, you think you believe in conspiracy theories? And all of a sudden everyone's like, oh, well, yeah, when you put it like that.
Yeah. That's exactly why the government called them UAPs instead of UFOs in the last little fiasco of if there were aliens or not aliens among us in those things, which I went down a deep rabbit hole. I think not aliens at this point. But yeah, that's because people were too afraid inside the government to be associated with like looking up UFOs because they didn't want to be like loonies,
Congratulations.
So they called them
You
UAPs.
just put misinformation on the internet and are now on the no-fly list. No more you porn for
What
you.
What did I say? What was misinformation?
That it's not aliens.
Oh, sorry. I said I think it's not aliens. I didn't
No,
say
it doesn't matter.
So you can't even say that.
Yeah.
Oh,
Now we got to put a
we're
fucking
not
banner
there
on
yet.
our podcast about how people can obtain accurate alien information. Jesus. God. All right.
Well.
So, oh God.